Okay, Asha, you can start.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kausar. Well, good afternoon to everyone who is here today. And I welcome everyone to our perspective series, which is on navigating the landscape of emergency preparedness for people with disabilities. It seems like we are having a great panel today. So excited for the discussion. Well, from my side, I am Risha, one of the members of the programs team at Connectra Society. Before we begin, I would like to let everyone know regarding certain aspects of this meeting. This current event is being live streamed, so feel free to turn your camera on or off. Also, if you require closed captioning, please make sure to enable that in the Zoom. We are excited to have an open dialogue here today by answering all your questions, delivering certain information. So all the attendees are free to ask questions either in the chat, or you can maybe use the raise hand option in the Zoom by enabling that, or simply unmute yourself and speak if you would like to deliver something. And last but not the least, please be respectful to each other as we move along. Well, that's that. I think we all good to go to introduce our panelists for the discussion. I would start with Gavin. Gavin Thomas from Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC. He is a safety professional with more than 25 years of experience in emergency management, fire safety, and occupational health and safety. His expertise spans operational, tactical, and strategic emergency response, as well as fire and safety inspections, auditing, and enforcement. As a Canadian registered safety professional, Gavin is a chartered member of the Institutions of Occupational Health and Safety and Fire Engineers. His achievements have been recognized through awards and fire and development, as sustainability, as well as outstanding contribution to safety. Gavin's rich experiences makes him a valued consultant and trainer in emergency response, planning, and mitigation. Welcome, Gavin. You would like to add anything else?
I'm not sure whether my camera is working here. Sorry, I'm trying my best. I'm having technical issues.
Okay, that's okay. You can still, speak. You are audible? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm audible, yes?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much, for inviting me here, and thanks for that very nice introduction. Yeah, I've been in emergency response for over 25 years, and I've been unfortunate to see the aftermath of poor planning. So I'm really encouraged to be a part of this conversation, because it's obviously bringing it to the forefront. And I just can't stress enough how much these conversations are important to aid in planning for emergency events. So yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Thanks for being here. Then we have Asha Nair as our second panelist from Crest Food. Asha enjoyed working in the Canadian food industry for the past 10 years in quality assurance department of diverse industries, such as dairy, bakery, beverages, and more, and currently working as a quality assurance manager in Crest Foods. She also has combined 5 years experience in teaching, technical laboratory experience in India. Her area of expertise is designing food safety and food quality management systems through hazard analysis, root cause analysis, risk assessment, and implementing HACCP GFSI standards for companies. She has extensive industry experience and has provided technical consulting to food companies to achieve HACCP SQF certifications. She also teaches Food Safe Level 1 course in British Columbia and has experience in helping and guiding the retail food service sectors for Fraser Health inspections. Welcome, Asha. Would you like to add anything else?
Thank you, Risha. I think I'm audible. And yeah. Thanks for the good introduction. And looking forward for the meeting.
Thanks for being here, Asha. So that's that. We all set for the discussion. As I already mentioned, today's topic is going to be regarding the emergency preparedness. So when I am referring emergencies, it can be anything, right? Including maybe natural disasters, sometimes wildfire, earthquakes. There can be human-made emergencies as well, such as pandemics, industrial accidents, health crises, etc. Sometimes there are personal crises like medical emergencies, home fires, other accidents too. So this topic of emergency preparedness is vital, such an aspect of community resilience. And it's essential that our preparedness for the efforts are inclusive of all members of the society, regardless of their abilities. So, well, for this discussion, we have Gavin, who will be specifically focusing accessible emergency alerts and notification. Whereas we have Asha, she will be focusing food safety as an emergency preparedness. Well, that's that. I think I can directly go to the questions. Maybe I'll start with some general questions. I would like to ask, could you please share some insights regarding why this particular emergency preparedness is particularly important for individuals with disabilities? Anyone can start with Asha or maybe Gavin.
Yeah, I can kick off with that if that's okay. So inevitably, people with disabilities are going to be going to be more vulnerable historically, and it's basically due to their cognitive and physical challenges that they may have. Responding to alarms due to their cognitive or physical abilities is going to delay their evacuation times. So basically, within any traditional building, we're providing early alarms to try and get people moving quickly. You have something called an available response time and an available emergency response time. People may move slower with cognitive or physical abilities, so therefore the design of that building may not facilitate that safe evacuation. So it's really effective. We really need to get early alarms to people with disabilities in order to get them to move quicker and earlier. And unfortunately, some systems in traditional buildings don't facilitate that early alarm. Like, for instance, traditional alarm system can just be a buzzer, a very loud audible buzzer, which some people with cognitive disabilities would find that actually detriment due to their anxieties and things like that, and the social understanding of what that alarm actually means. So that needs to be communicated early, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just basically that available time for them to respond is slowed due to their abilities. So therefore we need to be reacting quicker.
True.
Sense.
So what's your take on this, Asha?
Pardon?
What's your take on this? I mean, why this topic would be so important when we're thinking in the lens for people with disabilities, this emergency preparedness?
I just want to talk on same topic on aspect of food safety. So in the case of emergency thing, as people with a disability, they should be advanced prepared for if something, food safety concern they have. For example, most of them will have some dietary restrictions. So they need to be aware of how to handle that situation. Usually we recommend that they can store the food items that will be stable. That means like it have longer shelf life, and having checking that ingredient deck and the nutritional panel to make sure that that will match their their sickness or their required dietary restrictions. And second thing we always need to consider is that most of these people can have allergic problems for the ingredients. So we need to have a knowledge, or they have to make sure that in the case of emergency incident, the people who come to take care of them should know that they have allergen concern, so they should not give them the food and which will lead to them anaphylactic reactions and even can make it a danger for their life. That's are the two major concerns that I feel like in the case of emergencies, they has to make sure there's a channel or a way to communicate this concern to the people who may come and help them.
Yeah, that makes sense. True. And that's itself, tell how much important this topic of emergency preparedness is for people with disabilities. Well, I would like to focus more on these accessible emergency alerts. Maybe my question is for Gavin. Could you please explain little bit in detail about what this actually accessible emergency alerts and notifications mean, particularly in the context of individuals with disabilities?
Well, I did touch on it a little earlier. Now, we need to be addressing what disabilities are coming. So, what I'm referring to there is that traditional audible systems are not going to be accessible to someone that has physical barrier to that sound, i.e., someone who is deaf or hearing impaired. So we got to be considering what alarm systems that we need in place. Does there need to be beacons, lighting strobes that can give that visual signal to somebody that has got that hearing disability? Also, somebody that is blind now that has come into your facility, deaf and blind. Now, how are we going to raise the alarm to that type of individual that we know that we've got in place in that facility? Now, there are systems in place which are vibrating personal emergency alarms, which that individual will carry around with them and their person, which is linked to your alarm system to give that physical sensation that their alarm is actually present. There's so much available out there now with new technology, and unfortunately, some organisations are slow on the uptake of and adoption of these systems. We've got to ensure an inclusive workforce, and therefore, if we're bringing people into our facilities that have these limitations due to a cognitive issue or a physical issue, then we have got to ensure that we're protecting their safety in our emergency. And for me, that it's imperative that we get people early warning and that they understand what that warning means. So we've got to effectively communicate and train what systems are we going to be using in our facilities. So there's lots of technologies out there. And it's just up to us through a thorough risk assessment to identify what those systems that we need to have in our facility for anyone that's in there, because everybody's a relevant person in terms of emergency response.
Yeah, so you already touched some of the challenges, but still I would like to know more regarding what would be some challenges for people with disabilities when coming to receiving and understanding these emergency alerts. What would be some other challenges when talking about such systems?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question there, sorry, but what organizations can do is something called a PEEPS. Now it's a personal evacuation plan. So you can have a general evacuation plan for your whole building, but if you've got somebody deemed a particular vulnerability, then you should be developing a personal evacuation plan on how we're assisting that person during that evacuation. And in that personal evacuation plan is going to be the level of supervision that's needed, the locations, safe locations and working locations that person can be in, and then how are we effectively raising an alarm and helping in their emergency escape. And it's very, very good practice to actually document those personal evacuation plans, their PEEPs, and keep them on their personal file and is communicated to them.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so just shifting the focus to the food safety again. So Asha, I would like to know, when coming to the food safety, this sanitization hygiene is very important. So I would like to know, what are some best practices to maintain this hygiene and sanitization standards in emergency situations?
Well, the basic thing is that wash your hands. That is even in any critical condition, even during the COVID time, the best practice or recommendation by the public health is that wash your hands as much as possible. Again, sanitize on the top of the after washing the hand. Make sure if possible, best practice is to use sanitizer also. But the washing the hand is sanitizing the hand is not an option to replace the hand washing. Hand washing is the best practice and that has to be followed. And usually we recommend to use soap for minimum 20 seconds, rubbing the hand properly, and then cleaning with the warm water. So that's a recommended practice. And during the emergency situation also, that has to be followed without any violation. Second thing is that another best practice is that and when and then we have to give guidance to the people or the people with the disability or in critical condition. We have to give them awareness that how often and when they has to do the hand washing. So make sure that always they do the hand washing after using the washrooms and after having lunch. So that practice when has to be done, that is also recommended to them. And the second thing is that regarding sanitization, make sure always try to clean the dishes in warm water. Never recommended to clean. Yes, dishwasher is the best practice, but if in case if we are not using the dishwasher, make sure that we clean up the dishes in warm water and are recommended to do the air drying. So that practices will avoid any kind of contamination or any cross contamination that can happen from the dirty dishes or something like that. And third is a very important thing is that disposal of waste, especially in the case of disability people. I don't know how often they can remove the waste from their home. So there should be a proper, overseeing of how often removing all the junks and waste from our home. Because if the waste are accumulating too much, then there is a chance of pest activity also. So when this pest activity pest activity start, I feel like in the case of disability people, it's hard for them to identify the signs of the pest. They cannot move around each corners because seeing a pest means it's already overgrown. So signs are the pest are the first thing that we notice and we'll feel like okay there is some pest activity. So in the case of is disability people, it will be a little challenging for them to look into each corners and figure out hey there is any poops of mice or there is any debris of the cockroach. So it's not that practically easy. So that is also should be considered. And avoiding the pest activity, the best recommended practice is clean properly. And another recommendation I want to do for keeping their area sanitized, clean is that to avoid unnecessary things to stay on the floor. So as long as anything will be any extra stuff stay in the floor, nobody going to remove that and then do a deep cleaning. In that cases, there is more accumulation of these, there's more chance of pest activity. So recommendation is that keep the stuff or keep the things that is easy for them to clean. So it doesn't matter, they don't need thousands of dishes or anything. Whatever dishes they need, that's it. And also they don't need thousands of, furnitures or anything. So whatever they can access and they can clean and move around, that is only recommended in their home or area. That way they can maintain whatever they have, in a good sanitized condition. And using sanitizers once in a while where they mostly use like the table they always eat having the food and cleaning the changing the cloth or table cloth or anything is there, then they removing that clothes after every sitting. That all will help to maintain a clean atmosphere or clean area around their home. So this is all the recommendation I feel necessary to maintain a healthy, healthy, clean environment for them.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's some, clear practical practices that can be followed. Along with that, I would like to touch the area of storage. I mean, talking about this crisis or emergency situations, that's something very important. So, what are some practical tips you can share for storing emergency food supplies in a way that's very accessible for people with
Yeah.
disabilities? You have some suggestions for that? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the important thing is that now our industry is changing, and the trend for in now is especially after the pandemic, more people are more concerned about their health, and mostly after 40s or people with a disability or any medical issue, they're always having the problem with their dietary requirements, and now I just for my suggestion is that just follow the requirement of the medical practitioners, such as like sometimes they will have to get something low in carbohydrate or low in sugar and or low in sodium, potassium, or high in fibers. So that will be all their dietary requirement. So we need to figure it out that what is the requirement by the dietary restriction or requirement that's suggested by the medical practitioner. Second step is how to collect these items or food items according to dietary restriction. Well, for as per CFI, a Canadian Food Inspectory Agency, who do the regulations and law, how to put the labels or how the product has to be on all the aspect of safety to the customers or the Canadians. They always hide is a requirement that there should be have a nutritional panel in all that retail packing indicated, even though it's a wholesale, but again, wholesale is more controlled. But in the case of the retail packing, where when we go and grab the stuff from the stores, it should have a nutritional panel, and that nutritional panel will indicate how much concentration of each how much percentage of each sub ingredients, like all the electrolytes and all the biomolecules like carbohydrate, fat, total fat, or saturated fat. The things what we has to mention, that is a requirement, and we follow that one. That will help you to anyone to identify or match the dietary requirement that's suggested by the medical practitioner. Then second step is that, okay, in the case of emergency preparedness or in the case of disability people, as we need to store or collect the ingredients, right, and store. Storage, in the case of storing the food for a longer time, always collect the ingredients or products that have shelf-stable. Shelf-stable means it has longer shelf life. Let's say, like for example, we cannot collect milk because milk has maximum 2 weeks shelf life, right? But in the case of, for example, salt and sugar, it is okay because it has longer shelf life for 2 years and 3 years, right? So in general, for easy thing, we can just ask them or just practice them that, hey, whatever that go to the fridge or freezer, freezer is a different story, fridge that has low shelf life period. So whatever in room temperature, which is allowed to keep in the room temperature, that have more shelf life. Okay, so and simply in freezer product have mostly 1 year shelf life. So this is the simple, we cannot explain them the science behind why it's happening, but simply we can advise, okay, just get something that is shelf stable, simply get that is okay to keep in the room temperature. Then you can collect the energy, mostly recommended is energy bars, nuts, because they all have higher shelf life, like a 6 month and 1 year, and which will give them protein or energy at the same time, following that dietary requirement. Let's say like the people with the nut allergy cannot take stored nuts. At the same time, they can oats may be not allergic to them. They can get some protein bars or energy bar. Following this nutritional, looking into the nutritional panel and checking their dietary requirement and storing it. So that's the best thing I can do. Fruits, veggies, and that is not recommended in the emergency preparedness situation because their shelf life is very less. So go with shelf life. That is my recommendation for. And behind every product in Canada, you will have a nutritional panel. Follow that for the dietary requirement. Thank you.
That's great. I mean, you also touched the area of dietary needs for people with disabilities. Well, so now I would like to again shift to the emergency alerts. where I was wondering, Gavin, how can these emergency responders and organizations can ensure that their communications are inclusive and accessible to all members of the community, including those with disabilities? What your take on that?
I beg your pardon, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Sure. So I was asking the role of emergency responders and organizations, how they can ensure that their communications are inclusive and accessible to all the members of the community, including those with disabilities. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so basically, emergency responders have got to consider what medium they're spreading any information, and that medium needs to be inclusive to all disabilities, some that we mentioned earlier, and that whether that be visually impaired, or audibly impaired, or cognitively impaired. So it's just any communication that's going out there has got to be very simple in plain language, easily understood, and communicated prior to an emergency. So it's through educational programs in schools, in society, in special group networks then, and through caregiver societies. If we're given this early education of what the alarm system and notification system looks like, then when that comes through, everybody's already aware of what that alarm means. And as I say, it's really the medium it's being shared in is really critical. There's accessibility issues, unfortunately, in society at the moment, for effective communications for disabled people, like Braille. How often are we communicating emergency responses in Braille? We have text to speak apps now on our phone, which is so valuable for disabled people, especially those with visual disabilities. The text to speech alerts are really effective. BC at the moment and Canada are working on something called Next Gen 911, which is currently in development at the moment, which is really utilizing technology through the disability aids that actually comes in our mobile phones, where now we're actually able to communicate an emergency to responders through video sharing, picture sharing, and so forth. So those people with disabilities that may not be able to communicate what situation they're actually in, now they should, moving forward, be able to send a video or a photo to the 911 centres, the call handler, would have a better understanding of what emergency situation they're turning up to. Also, the Next Gen 911 is looking for individuals to be able to put in their actually physical disability or their cognitive disability, and what even down to what allergies or medical prescriptions they have, which is essential for their life support, can be preloaded into the 911 system, so responders will turn up knowing in advance what life critical equipment the disabled person may need and may need to consider in their personal evacuation plan once they're actually being attended. So there's great innovation taking place, and hopefully it gets rolled out successfully, because whilst it's being built, it hasn't currently been rolled out in a full format. But we're really excited to see what the Next Gen 911 brings.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would like to ask the same question to Asha as well. I mean, what do you think the role of such community organizations and emergency responders in assisting individuals with disabilities in maintaining food safety during crisis times? What do you think?
Well, I already mentioned that in the, before I was talking, the main important thing is that they should know the people who is helping out or assisting them during the crisis. They should know their dietary restriction. And second thing is if they are allergic to any ingredient. So their health condition and they have any, other kind of information should be, available to this first responders. And if organizations like yours, if they're helping the disability, when they do the history of their medical condition, they should account for this also. And also, the basic sanitations or, food hygiene practices that we need to follow. How far they can do by themselves, or if they need help for that, doing that also, then we need to be trained for that. So that kind of awareness should be there. And the people who are working with this organization, I recommend them to have the basic knowledge of all this. So I recommend them to have done some courses. Usually the Fraser Health will run the course like a food safe level 1 and level 2, or any kind of biology background on or food science background, so that they know aware that okay, what all things has to be considered for the when during the emergency preparedness. Yeah, well, another thing is that I always say that okay, storage. When we are feeding the people with the high risk product like a meat product, dairy product, and everything, extra precautions and everything should be taken care, like a storage. So in during the disaster thing, I don't know how practically that is possible to store the food. So that should be very much considered. How they can be stored, like the product that can be stored in the ambient temperature, it will be easy to store. So we offer, when we considering the high risk product like meat or dairy or any veggies or anything, then we need to consider, okay, practically how it's possible. Do we have a storage system? And if there will be, if you buy this stuff, then how we going to be storing this after the use? Or if we are disposing it, let's say like, okay, we are when in the case of emergency condition, I don't recommend them to buy 4-liter can of milk, because sometimes that people don't need it, because if we don't know whether it's a storage condition, right? So I recommend them to use some small sachets or whichever one-time used packages, so that they can use and dispose. So that kind of stuff should be always be recommended. Same like travel plans. We always carry during the travel smaller size of travel package, soap, sanitizers, and shampoos and everything. Similarly, during this condition, if even we are looking forward for a high risk product or ready to eat meals or anything, make sure they can open, warm up, and eat, and then dispose. Leftover keeping and everything will be challenges for them. So packages that having 100 gram or 200 gram or whatever their requirement, like a protein content 200 gram, whatever their suggestion by the medical practitioners, just follow that during that conditions. Not recommended to get something and store and reuse, and then because storing and reheating everything cannot be practically possible. And if there is any problem happening between this all process, there is a chance of getting them sick or into higher contamination chance. And another important, along with the food safety, we always consider the allergen as a major issue, because if people are allergic to some ingredient, even 1 ppm is enough to kill them. So during the emergency condition, we don't know whether where we can give a proper treatment when they are struggling from allergic reactions. So that's why I recommend, before you going to help them or figuring out and assisting them during the emergency situation, make sure that they have any medical issues can happen because of having some food or that kind of stuff. So that's all the things as an organization need to figure it out. And basically, they need to have trained on all these basic food safety requirements to assist the people.
Well, thanks for that. Now, talking about the emergency alert system again, Gavin, what do you think? Are there any legal or regulatory requirements in place to ensure that these emergency alert systems are accessible?
Yeah, The main legislation that's out there at the moment, especially here in British Columbia, is the British Columbian Accessibility Act. Now it's Bill M219. Now, what that act basically lays out is that any new build, any organisation, any public environment needs to take the consideration of peoples with disabilities that may be in visiting or living in their premises. And
Customer coming around Corey. Customer coming around Corey. Thank you.
And basically what it looks at is removing any barriers to communication or physical barriers that would hinder the safety of a disabled person that's visiting any premises. And it goes into delivery of goods and services as well. You know, people with disability need to be included in everyday life. So that's actually just accessing buildings and actually being accessible to any goods or service that you may need. Simple as coming down to going to the cinema. You know, we need to be able to make sure that everybody can get safe and access and egress to simple buildings such as cinemas. Public transport, there needs to be considerations for disabled people within public transport as well. And most public transport now is designed so that if there is any form of emergency, that disabled people can be evacuated safely from the public transport. And it also goes into as far as your building code. Buildings have to be built considering the safe access of egress of people with disabilities. So even down to the height of your light switches, the height of your emergency call points need to be considered. Can somebody in a wheelchair physically and capably easily reach that emergency call point to sound an alarm? And somebody that's in a wheelchair gets safe access and egress to every part of your building. So are your doors wide enough? Are your corridors wide enough? Do you have ramps? If they can't get someone safely from the second floor of the building, then perhaps you need to be considering that that person should not be homed, accommodated, or educated in that specific part of that building if we can't secure the safe egress. And then it also goes into the Accessibility Act about effective communication and training again. There's no point of having all these systems in place if no one knows they actually exist, or actually how to use them. So that's really, really important. And then health and safety regulations as well. They really go subscriptive into having to make sure that you are prepared and you're able to respond for any emergency that may take place within your business. And you as an employer are actually responsible for the effective emergency response and safe evacuation. And that's really prescriptive, really, in the health and safety regs. And then finally, you've got a provincial alert system during BC, and even down to the emergency alert system that we have provincially, that has been built, that application has been developed to make sure they meet their legal obligation in line with the Accessibilities Act. So there's a lot, yes, there's a lot of legal requirements to do this. And not only is it a legal requirement, for me mainly it's a moral obligation. It's something we should all be doing as organizations, as people. Just morally, it's the right thing to be inclusive and consider the safety of everybody that we're ever interacting with.
Yeah, so along with that, I would like to address, you already mentioned the role of technology. Still looking forward to that future, what advancements or developments do you hope to see here in the emergency alerts and notifications areas for people with disabilities?
So it's really what you'd like to see is it always comes down to a fine balance. and that fine balance is persons' right as well to a personal life, so that we are not intruding too much. Like, I'd love to be able to see that that our mobile phone devices have GPS facilities on them. Now, there is talk about people who register via the new next gen 911 to be able to give access to the GPS location on their mobile phone. So in a case of an emergency, let's say you've got a major earthquake, and we've seen it how many times where unfortunately people have been buried and emergency response personnel are searching for those individuals. Well, let's talk about mobile phone GPSs being used, but then that becomes down to other societal issues then, which is outside of this conversation, whether that's appropriate to do, because everyone's free to a personal life. And if we're tracking everything, then that brings other issues in. But hopefully the technology is there, everyone carries a mobile phone with them, and it would be hugely beneficial for emergency responders to be able to know the GPS locations. But we wait and see whether something like that does happen.
Yeah, we hope to see such advancements soon. It's amazing. And I would recommend our participants to, raise hand or maybe put your questions in the chat if you have any. We are almost nearing the time. So I would maybe ask as a wrapping up question, is there anything else you would like to share or any final thoughts on what you have just shared?
Myself, sorry?
Any final thoughts regarding this whole topic? Yeah.
Just for me, there is huge resources out there at the moment to assist people with developing their own personal evacuation plan. There's an Canada's Emergency Response Department have actually put together an emergency response guide for people with disabilities and special needs. And it provides detailed checklists of considerations that people should be looking at. It comes down to what's been discussed here: preparation for food and water and other emergency responses. And it really hits home on developing a network of trusted people around you, that you know that in case of emergency, you can phone and can respond and can come to your aid. And it's having a robust network that for people to come and give you that support, that would know what your unique needs are, for your safety, how your life safety critical equipment operates, what your prescriptions are, what your medication needs are. Do you need oxygen, dialysis machines? How do these work? It becomes into real quite detail of these considerations, and you have to have trusted people that you can call upon and knows your unique needs. And once you've developed that personal plan, it is essential to share it with social groups and any caregivers and anything that may be coming in and helping with that need as well. So it's really good. The resources are there, and I really look at using them.
Julia had just asked a question regarding the accommodations for elevator in case of earthquake for disability people to get out.
So within any earthquake situation, you're looking at more of a shelter in place. Now, any high-rise building should have safe shelter in place zones. Now, I wouldn't be recommending using earthquakes within elevators within an earthquake situation. And if we've got really good planning, people that have got special requirements for that type of emergency, we should be getting ahead of it, and perhaps they should be homed or secured on the ground floor as opposed to needing to use any kind of elevator.
So Asha, do you have any final thoughts to share about? You are muted. Could you please unmute yourself? Yeah, it's good now.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned before, important thing is that the people who are helping out them, or who is acting during the emergency, should aware of what to do. So I recommend the people all the people or organization who is involving in this all preparedness or emergency things, they should be properly trained and properly trained to do interviews, or get collected all the information, or they should have already because some people, the people who come to help them, may be not accessible for their medical history. So we should have a channel in place, we should have plan B in place, or in a way to access, there should be a channel to that these people in the case of emergency should have access for their medical thing or medical history related to food safety, or yes, food safety also. So for that, and doing the risk assessment and analyzing what to do for each individual, the people should be aware that the helping hand should aware that what to do. So only thing solution for this training, compulsory training for all the organization that is involved in doing or helping the disabled, not only for disability, any people who need help. And that should be most of the area it is covered. It's in most community activity. Basic food safety training is a recommended, and it's a compulsory thing. And I don't know how far that is involved. I know how practically doing it in the areas where there is an emergency preparedness and disability people. So in that cases, I recommend the thorough training, or it should be one of the requirement to be part of this in action. So in that cases, we cover, if the possible chance of risk during these emergency conditions.
That's amazing. Also, we had a question from Kelby.
Yeah.
She was asking about how would you all recommend implementing or practicing these details? I mean, how do you make this process less daunting? For example, having a personal evacuation plan is great, but what about during an actual emergency? Would anyone know it, or how to use evacuation equipment, etc.? I think maybe Gavin can answer this.
Yeah, really good point. This can be quite daunting. But how do I say? There's four pillars to emergency response, and they documented everywhere you have a look. And the first thing for any kind of emergency response is preparedness. And as part of preparedness is training. Now, when you develop in these personal evacuations plans, yes, they can be daunting, but it's open communication. Disabled people know their own needs. And if you ask the question, what do you need? What special assistance do you require? They will know, and they will be able to communicate that to you quite successfully prior to an emergency. Now, once you've got the understanding of what's needed, then it's just practice it. Does this act what I've said I'm going to do? Let's try it. Let's see if this is practicable. Can it be done? And if it can be done quite successfully, then you've proved your personal evacuation plan is effective. If it wasn't successful, then you have to go back, readdress it, replan. As I say, so getting a plan in place can take some time, but we can't forget that this is being done in preparation for an event that hopefully will never happen. So prepare by doing the plan, practice it, and if it doesn't work, review and redevelop. So I appreciate that there's a lot of information which is out there. There's a lot of resources out there, but it's really, first thing is communication. People just need to talk, be aware of the topic, and really engage with the individual that it concerns, because they will know their own needs and they will probably come up with the best plan that suits their needs.
Thanks for that, Gavin. We had another question from Julia. I think that's for Asha. That's any recommendation for drinking water supply, and how long should the food supply, shelf life food should be?
As per we are so lucky as as a Canadians, or living in Canada, because there's only few countries where the drinking water supplied by the city is allowed to be drink. For I mean, like you don't need to boil or anything. Safety is 100% assured. So usually city water, they will do regular checking for all the E. coli or fecal contaminations, and they do the microbial testing and then release. So it is safe to drink. And the shelf life of water bottling, I don't work directly in water bottling company. I work in other bottling company, and usually we provide for fruit juice and everything 1 year shelf life. That's what we keep. For if for example, I think you all know that the small combi juice bottles, like we give to kids, and usually we recommended they will give 1 year shelf life and kept in the ambient temperature or room temperature. It has high presence of these potassium sorbate or any preservatives added. So here is the simple logic. The food that is stored mostly in ambient temperature, room temperature will have always we always have to put the preservatives to get that much long shelf life. So the one in the freezers and coolers will have less preservative compared to the other one. That way having compromised shelf life. And I recommend to store always the product that will have a longer shelf life, at least for 1 year or at least for 3 months to 1 year. Most of the dry like a granola bars with less moisture content. Simply if the moisture content is less, water content is less, it will automatically will have longer shelf life. So dry ingredients, unless like purees will have less shelf life. The purees that having higher shelf life will always have preservative in place. So make sure that some people sometimes we use potassium along with the potassium sorbate. Sometimes we use sodium metabisulfite as a preservative, and in that cases, what happens is that this preservatives, sulfide is an allergen for some of the people. So that also has to be considered. So at the end, again, it's just focus mostly on dry ingredients, less moisture content, and more healthy like energy bars or more protein content product. That have I think 6 to 1 year is a recommended best shelf life to be get. And I think I already answered about the drinking water. Yeah, as long as it is a city water, it's not contaminated with any sewage, and it is regularly tested, it's safe to drink.
Well, we have a final question. I think again to Gavin, that's, do you have a sample emergency plan or emergency bag for disabled people? What kind of social network is practical?
Yeah, so obviously all depending on the severity and type of disability that an individual have, that would obviously change dependent on their requirements. If someone is on dialysis, for instance, and they have a medical chair, then that would form part of their emergency response kit, along with chargers and emergency backup batteries. So that would be very unique to that individual. That's why that comes back to that personal evacuation plan. But if you refer to the emergency preparedness guidance that the Public Safety Canada has put together, there is a checklist in there of what a basic emergency response pack would look like, and that's your water requirements, recommended dry food, emergency blankets, shovels, all things like that, torches. So it gives a basic emergency response, emergency preparedness pack, but then it asks questions then of what is specific requirement for that individual, which will then supplement that package.
Thanks for that. And that's that. We are almost at our time. I mean, thank you so much. I myself learned a lot regarding the emergency alerts and food safety. I appreciate everyone who joined. You audience were too interactive. Thanks for the amazing questions. Thanks for everyone. And special thanks to the panelists for sharing the invaluable insights. I mean, your participation has made this conversation impactful. Let's continue working together to ensure inclusivity and safety in our communities. Thank you for all the contribution. Thanks very much, everyone. And goodbye for now. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Risha.
Thank you, Asha, and thank you, Gavin. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you.